Hi, this is Ian Harvey, Tokyo US Brand Manager. I'm here today with Jeff Corder. Jeff is a Rossignol Nordic Category Manager for the United States. He grew up in Fayston, Vermont, starting skiing at age 3, both alpine and Nordic. He attended Green Mountain Valley School and UVM, University of Vermont, both playing soccer and ski racing. Jeff is an accomplished elite athlete, having competed at an elite or pro level in soccer, and was named to the US Alpine ski team in the early 90s. He has been a former elite and pro level road and mountain bike racer and competitive trail runner. Professionally, Jeff worked as a product developer for run, bike, and ski brands for 15 years, and also worked retail in the Nordic ski industry for 8 years, stone grinding, providing race service, and picking skis. He has worked in the Nordic division for Rossignol for the last 5 years. Jeff lives and works in Park City, Utah with his wife, Lauren, and their 14-month-old daughter, Remy. This interview is a result of email requests that I received. So I do listen, and hopefully this will be popular. Jeff, thank you very much for being with me today.
Hey, Ian, how you doing? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure it will. Okay, I've got a ton of questions for you that are of a more technical nature, but I'd like to start out by asking you where you grew up and how you started skiing.
As you said in the intro, I grew up in Vermont. I grew up in a ski resort town. Most people don't know Fayston, but some people might know Waitsfield, which is home to Sugarbush Ski Resort and Mad River Glen. That's where I grew up. Small little town, but to have 3 ski resorts in the close proximity, and at the time we had probably 3 to 4 different cross-country touring centers as well, plus not to mention the Catamount Trail, which is a different association that runs the whole length of the state. And so just lots and lots of opportunities to get outside. So it's a pretty idyllic place for sure.
So not many people would know where I'm talking about, but I lived in a cabin way up on the mountain above Moortown, Vermont.
Yeah, I know it very, very well. One of my best friends owns a mountain in Moortown, Vermont.
Yeah, so we're talking about rural Vermont, way up on the mountain, from the paved road. I don't remember what the number is, but the paved road that goes next to the river. It's
Route 100. Yep.
Yeah, 100, exactly. It's like 10 or 15 minutes of dirt roads going up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
And then the cabin didn't have, normal amenities. Like, we did have electricity, but we didn't have running water for most of the time. But I lived there for about 1.5 years, which was an awesome experience. So anyway, I know the area real well.
Yeah, that's 20 minutes from where I grew up. So it's I know the area very, very well. And back when I was riding bikes a lot, and we would be looking for great, back then before kind of gravel bikes took off, on our road bikes, we'd ride all those dirt roads up there, and they were so much fun.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. So did you grow up in a ski family?
I did. Both my parents were ski instructors. That wasn't necessarily their full-time job. They both had like real jobs, but they love skiing. That's kind of what brought us to Vermont in general. My family's originally from New Jersey, but that's kind of what brought them to Vermont, and or at least my mom. And it's just kind of how we've grown up, and kind of a testament not only to both my mom and dad, but really kind of the community where we grew up is, the whole thing is just about, like, skiing is a very central part of kind of our community, our town, the whole kind of the Mad River Valley, as it's called. And it's just I formed, lifelong friendships, obviously, but the experiences that it offered me kind of over the years and even still now are tremendous. So, yeah.
Super. So Jeff, I know you were named to the US Alpine ski team in the early 90s. Was slalom your best event, or how was that?
It was, it's a lifetime ago now. But yeah, I was more of what's called a technical skier. So more slalom and giant slalom. I did ski all 4 events. So Super G, downhill, slalom and giant slalom, but I tended to kind of excel in the more slalom and giant slalom. So it was, again, it was a lot of fun while it lasted.
Cool. So it's unusual, at least from my perspective, for a person who has achieved such excellence in alpine ski racing to have been a Nordic skier his entire life and to continue to have a passion and be very active in Nordic skiing.
Yeah, again, it says something of not, I mean, a lot about my family, but then a lot about where I grew up. I mean, even the elementary school where I grew up, every Friday in the wintertime, like they do in a lot of mountain towns, we had a half day, and then, but we, where a lot of towns or a lot of schools will go, they'll send everybody out alpine skiing for the day or something like that. We used to actually alternate. One week was alpine, the next week was cross country. So everybody got exposed to cross country skiing at a very, very early age. And where at least my house was located, where my mom still lives, is, there's endless amounts of trails and really, really easy accessible cross country skiing out the door. And for me and my friends, cross country skiing, even when we were alpine skiing, it was a way to get outside in the wintertime because we didn't want to be cooped up inside. And, this was before the days of, serious like 500 channels of television and video games and all that kind of stuff. So all we wanted to do was be outside. So it was pretty fun for sure.
It wasn't too long ago that skiing was skiing and people didn't split hairs too much about alpine or Nordic or backcountry or run an A. If a person loves skiing, they'd pick their equipment based on the opportunities available and the conditions and go out. So it's kind of cool to hear that. Did you ever go skiing at Ollies Cross Country Center? That's right there. Huh?
Oh yeah. Endless amounts of times. Yeah. I mean, they're still open, and they're actually a Rossignol touring center, as a matter of fact. And no, I'm sad to say I don't know the guys as well who run it now, but a guy, Jim, who used to run it growing up, I knew him, I knew his whole family. He was really good friends with my mom, and so that's where we would go. And honestly, we'd go out skiing, 9, 10 o'clock at night and just headlamps and go ski around. And it was a blast, and still is. Yeah.
Is that Jim Dupre? Or, I don't know how you pronounce
it. Absolutely.
I used to race as a young junior against him, but I haven't seen him or talked to him in, 35 years. But since then, Gene Foley managed it for years, and Gene and I were good friends. Or friends.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know Gene quite as well, but I knew Jim very well. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. How did you start working for Rossignol Nordic?
So I lived in Colorado also for a long time. So like most New Englanders who are craving some sunshine but still want some snow, they moved to the West Coast or moved to the West. So whether it's Utah or or Colorado or Montana or Idaho or anything like that, I just happened to land in Colorado. And I was working for a Nordic company there, a Nordic retailer, and got to know the guys who were running the Nordic division at Rossignol at that time really well. I was doing a lot of like high level kind of elite stone grinding, as well as race service. And they knew that I knew skis very, very well, not only from kind of growing up in a lot of experience, but also just from, I'd be stone grinding 8 to 10, 12 hours a day. And so when you're stone grinding, you learn skis very, very quickly. And so I kind of helped the guys, Ryan, who used to run the division, who I know very well, helped him with some base quality issues, as well as some stone grinding suggestions, for their production and all that kind of stuff. And I just kind of, started a relationship with those guys. I got to know them really, really well. And then when it came time and the timing was right, my wife and I were really looking to be back in the mountains and not spend so much time in the car, really is what it was. And they came across the radar again, and here I am.
This is a side note, but I'm curious to see if you've seen the same thing. From my perspective, the Mountain West is full of New Englanders who are mountain crazy and have moved out here and then just spend all day in the every free moment in the mountains. It seems like most of the most mountain enthusiastic people like ourselves are actually from the East. Who have
oh, absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's just, like you, it's just kind of that's how you grow up, and it's part of who you are. And, my wife is from the Midwest, and we have very different views. As much as she loves cross-country skiing, alpine skiing, backcountry skiing, she's a huge telemark skier. As much as she loves that, it's not really ingrained in her soul like it is with, at least with me. And, you know, I can't wait for it to snow. I can't wait for it to get cold. Like my favorite time to go run is in the winter at night when it's dumping snow. And just because there's just something magical about it.
Yeah. And you probably didn't know, but I grew up out east. I grew up in Massachusetts, went to school in New Hampshire, then went to Vermont. And it's kind of like you're always looking west, and it was bigger mountains with less traffic generally, and more sun. You know, it's kind of like, well, duh. And so, you know, I pretty much spend every free moment I have with my family in the mountains, either summer hiking, biking, you know, skiing, whatever it is. I'm in the mountains, like you.
Yeah, I mean, same with us. And now, especially with a young daughter who's she's a troublemaker for sure. And honestly, all she wants to do is be outside. So it's great to see that. I don't know whether that's just kind of her personality or whether we're starting to rub off on her. But it's great to see. And honestly, it's a big relief as well that she likes to be outside as much as we do. So it's fun.
Yeah. You wouldn't want to have to choose between spending time in the mountains and your family. That's for sure.
No, definitely not.
Okay. So let's get back to Rossignol.
Okay.
Can you describe the brand and company Rossignol for us? What impresses you most about Rossignol?
You know, the thing that really impresses me most about Rossignol is kind of the long-term commitment that a lot of its employees and people who are associated with the brand have. You know, honestly, I was a Rossignol athlete growing up as an alpine skier and always skied on Rossignol, and you know, with little forays here and there to maybe a couple other brands, but I always came back after a year or two. And it really what it is. It's a big family. And, you know, there's a testament to a lot of the people who have been with the brand for so long. I mean, a lot of our reps, our previous president, Ron, who just retired about a year and a half ago, is the only company he'd ever worked for. He worked for 42 years. Our current CFO is about to retire. It's the only company he's ever worked for. He's been here for 46 or 48 years. I mean, it's astounding how long-term these guys are just committed to the brand. And it's fun to see. You know, it's a small company. It's probably smaller than a lot of people realize how few people work for the company. So, you know, we all have 19 jobs, but keeps it fresh. But at the same time, it's hard to get in because there aren't a lot of opportunities. But once you're in, people don't generally leave.
Cool. I appreciate that. That's kind of my language. I just broke 20 years for Toco, and
yeah,
I hope that there's another 20 coming. Okay. So this is one of the questions I was asked to ask you.
Yeah.
When Rossignol comes out with new Nordic skis at any level, from recreation to racing, can you describe the development and testing process that has gone through to ensure an improved product? Like basically just describe the development process.
Yeah. I mean, it's multiple years in the making before a new product hits the market, whether it's, you know, backcountry touring, or top level race. You know, top level race, we have a lot of avenues as far as outlets for testing. So the World Cup obviously is being one of them. Our race managers in Europe, Simone Caprini, who's works really closely with a lot of the top athletes in the world. He's one of the kind of the foremost guys. He and Dominique Locatelli, who's in charge of all of our global development. Dominique himself was a 3-time Olympian back in the 80s. I'm sure maybe you know him as well. So, you know, those guys, it all starts with them kind of testing things here and there, playing around. And it's 3 to 4 years ahead of when it actually hits the market, when this, you know, the kind of the wheels start to move, and then, you know, kind of start to play around with some different constructions or some different ideas. And then a few years out is when stuff really starts to hit the snow. And whether that be, you know, and they'll test all different manners of, you know, construction, whether it's a ski or different aspects of a boot or pole even. And so, you know, from my perspective, it's been pretty fun to see, because I'm actually a part of the global design development team. So I've been lucky enough to be involved in a lot of these things over the last 5 years. And so it's, I mean, I remember last May, we happened to have a lot of snow up high in Utah, and last May, and I was heading over to Europe for a bunch of meetings and to go and I work really closely with a lot of factories, and I was, I had a whole bunch of touring skis laid out at the top of a pass up in the Uinta Mountains, and was just back and forth and testing skin placements and this and that. And so it's an ongoing process for sure, all through the winter, obviously, but then even in the summertime in Europe, our French team they're in the ski tunnels in Oberhof and a few other places and up on glaciers, testing really to no end. It's impressive the amount of work that goes into some of these products. But there is a big lead time before this stuff hits the market, because we want it to be, as fine-tuned and as polished as possible.
Have you ever come out with an options for a new model using different materials? So the same construction, it's like, okay, this is a construction we want to go to, but we're going to try this sidewall material, and here's another sample of this sidewall material, or with this base material versus this base material. Is that a pretty common thing?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's, on the race side, we'll mess around with like, okay, what happens if we put 3 layers of carbon in versus 1 layer of carbon, and so on and so forth. And, test how the performance varies in not only different snow conditions, but different temperature conditions. And then, honestly, even in the touring and backcountry range, we test a lot of that stuff too. So we'll test different constructions, different cores, whether it's a wood air core, or we'll put something, more like a Polonia core, which they use in really lightweight alpine touring stuff. We'll test a lot of different variations out there for sure.
So obviously I knew that goes on in racing, but I don't think people understand the development effort and the effort to get it right when it comes to the recreational skis and touring skis as well.
Oh, absolutely. In the US and Canada, especially, I think for any company out there, touring and backcountry sales far outweigh what we actually do in race sales. So really, those are kind of the money makers. And so for us, for the North American market, we actually drive that global production for sure. There is some interest in that for sure in Scandinavia, and I work pretty closely with some of the Norwegians on the Rossignol team as far as development stuff. But really, Jacques Vincent, who runs Rossignol Nordic in Canada, he and I, it comes down to what we want and what we want the ski to be, how we want the ski to behave, how we want the boot to behave, before it really hits the market. And we'll test, maybe not quite as much as the top level race stuff, but we'll test quite a bit as far as backcountry and touring equipment.
Yeah, super. So this would be racing and touring. You go skiing and you see 20-year-old pairs of skis being skied on out there. And oftentimes, I remember the skis because I had them.
Oh yeah.
They were, it was a good model, kind of a thing. But it brings the question that, and back then I was really happy with those skis. But it brings the question, is there such thing as progress when it comes to ski development from year to year? I've skied on some of my old favorite skis, and I was surprised to find that although they were still quite fast, they handled so much worse than the more modern skis with newer construction and materials. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. It's, as with alpine skis, the more wax that gets into a ski base is generally going to be a faster ski. So, an older ski can still have some really, really good speed. But it's the newer technologies, whether it's that increased lateral stiffness of a skate ski, or or a skin placement on a ski, or new construction in a ski, is definitely going to change the behavior of the ski. So the newer stuff that we've seen in the last really 5 or 10 years from every company out there, really, just in fine tuning, not only like the lightweight aspects of a ski, but also, newer construction possibilities as far as materials that are available to us. Prices on a lot of that stuff have come down quite a bit, so they're a little bit more consumer friendly. but older skis can definitely be fast, but you will definitely notice a performance difference versus the newer stuff. The newer stuff just has, with that greater, kind of construction ease of newer materials, but also just being able to kind of fine tune the builds to have more energy return and more liveliness under your feet. And now a lot of companies are thinking about kind of where they put the weight in the ski as well, which, in the past was probably, I'm sure it was a concern, 30 years ago or something like that, but not quite to the level that it is now. I think there's I think just the opportunities that afford us now with the possibilities probably, weren't really there 25, 30 years ago, as far as what we can put into a ski.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing, but
yeah,
you hear it from the horse's mouth.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Jeff, I know Rossignol came out with a lot of new skis this year. We can talk about the new Xium Premium skaters later, but I would like to start from the bottom up. The Evo Touring ski line is new for this coming winter. Can you describe the Evo Touring skis and comment on what improvements have been made, please?
Sure, yeah. So the Evos are, for Rossignol and our touring customer, it's kind of our bread and butter. It's a short compact ski, so it's only offered in 4 sizes, and we size it like we do t-shirts, so small, medium, large, extra large, so it's super easy to fit. But with having a little bit shorter length ski, it's all about maneuverability and ease of use. Maneuverability as far as, just because you don't have, what's considered a traditional length classic ski under your foot, there's a lot less kind of ski to worry about underneath you, and it's a lot easier to handle. They all have a little bit wider platform as well, so really easy to balance, really easy to learn. And in the Evo range, we have everything from kind of that entry-level customer who's just starting, just wants to get out and enjoy, maybe had been on snowshoes in the past, but just wants to get out and kind of cruise around, whether they're in a neighborhood or a park or even a touring center, everywhere, to a little bit more performance with some skins on some of the bases of some of them, up to partial metal edge, something that's meant to be kind of go off track out into the woods where you can really just kind of bang it around. There's a little bit of everything for everybody in there. There's similarities across the board in the Evo range. From the big differences are construction and base material. Or base, how they grip the snow. So they're all waxless ski. So you don't have to put kick wax on. So it varies from a cut base, which is, actually, so the pattern, so that waxless pattern's cut into the base itself. There's an R skin, which is the mohair grip on the bottom. But then there's also something called a posi-track, which is actually a thermoformed mold, which is put into the base itself and then put onto the ski. So the pattern actually sticks down from the ski a little bit to guarantee a little bit more better, stronger kick, and it's a little bit harder material, so you can really, so durability goes way, way up. So there's a little bit of everything in there. So we refreshed some of the constructions, a little bit lighter weight. We kind of changed some of the cap constructions as well to kind of stiffen it up laterally, so it gives you a much more stable platform, a little easier to balance as well. But there's really, in the Evo range, there's something for everybody, for sure. It's a ski that a lot of touring centers use as their rental fleet as well.
I got my whole family the partial metal edge skis.
Yep, the OT65.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a pair of them myself. They're
absolutely love them. Yeah.
I know. We're lucky enough. We live about a mile or so away from a trail system in Park City. And when there's snow, we can ski right down the road and right to the trailhead and then out on the trails. It's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Which is the beauty of them.
Ski and snowmobile trails up by Daniel Summit with those.
Yeah.
So you climb up, anything. And even if it's icy and this and that, it handles all that no problem. But you can also go off track on let's say a track that one snowmobile drove on as compared to a piston pulling a bunch of snowmobiles. It'll handle that no problem too. So
yes,
it's super versatile and a whole lot of fun for the whole family.
Yeah, and even the widest Evo that we offer is still narrow enough to fit into a groomed Nordic track. So they're all really friendly at a touring center as well. So
super. Okay, this is something that you have a better perspective on than I don't know what the sales are of the couple models below the Xium Premiums, but I've always been amazed at the performance of the skis that are step or two down. So for example, the non-premium Xiums and also the
Yep.
Delta skis,
Yep.
they impress the heck out of me. They ski so well. The price points are amazing. The Delta skis, the comp and the course, I think are probably the best value in Nordic skiing, period, for for let's say racing or fitness skiing or that kind of a thing. Can you comment on that? Because I don't have the perspective you do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's, with those skis, especially, there's a lot of trickle down technology from the premium. So everything we learn at that top level of the premium ski, we can apply a lot of what we've learned down into kind of that next few levels of ski. So, we want to offer one, really good performance, but then also the best value that we possibly can. It's, the Xium and the Delta Comp in particular. Those two skis are, they're hard to beat, really. So they share the same core that we use on our top level premium skis, the Nomex Honeycomb. So it's really laterally stiff this way, but it has a lot of flexibility, especially in the tip and the tail. And it's a tapered build, so thicker through the middle of the ski, obviously, as you see with skis. So the tip and tail have really good flexibility, but we pull out a lot of we pull out the carbon, we pull out some of those kind of more aggressive features just to make it a little bit more forgiving. So, I mean, the beauty of a lot of the top end skis now is they're really easy to ski. The balance is great. They're super stiff laterally. And so, even for a kind of an intermediate or beginner skier, if they get on a top end ski, they're going to be able to ski on it, no problem. But the benefit of that next level or two down is that they're just much more forgiving. So your balance doesn't always have to be right on top of your ski, and your hips don't have to be like really over the top of the ski. And it's not going to kind of pitch you to the side or let you, it's an easier way to learn and easier way to get comfortable with technique before you kind of make that step up. And honestly, for most people, they're skis that they'll never outgrow because the quality and the performance is so good that for most people, that's more than they ever need. And and because of that, they're fantastic. And it's a great investment for sure.
For sure. So you might disagree with me on this one. But I think in many cases, people get skis that are designed for higher performance than the way that they will actually be skied on. What I mean by this is, for example, the Xium Premiums are designed to be skied on in a very dynamic manner, both skate and classic, working the camber aggressively. And I think many of these skiers might be happier with an Xium or a Delta Comp ski. For example, a lot of coaches ski on what we call coaches skis, real soft skis and skate in and classic that kick real easy, and they have skating a really easy breakaway speed. You don't have to work the camber and so on. And for me, that's what the Delta Comp is and the Xiums.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what your opinion is on this. If sometimes people get too nice a ski or, expensive, or what do you want to call it? Kind of a Porsche instead of getting the one step down that might satisfy their needs exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that can certainly happen for sure. And I think a lot of it is kind of personal preference, and it really depends on someone's budget. If they want the best, then I mean, who's to stop them from getting the best? But I do agree that, if someone's kind of getting into the sport and they're kind of progressing through those technique levels and, kind of that, working their way through the learning curve, that second to third tier ski is going to be an easier ski to learn on, as we were talking with before, just because it is more forgiving. And you really don't, there are easier skis to ski on without getting too discouraged. And then, I think what a lot of people do too is they'll have that, that whether it's an entry level ski or mid price point ski to learn on for a little while, and then they can always kind of step their way up and then, use those first pairs of skis as, kind of that early late season ski when they don't want to take out their really good skis.
Yeah, super. So let's talk about the new Xium Premium skaters.
Okay.
They're brand new for this coming year. I've had superb results with the Xium Premium skating skis and classic skis, but these past few years, I'm super happy with them. But I know a bit about the new skis that are coming out, and I'm really excited about them. They have a completely new flex pattern or pressure distribution. Can you describe last year's skis and how the new skis would compare with those?
Yeah. So when we set out to design this new ski, this again started probably 3 or 4 years ago, and we started talking about it. But really, over the last 2 or 3 years is when we've been able to test a bunch of the skis, and some of the athletes have been skiing on them in the World Cup with the old graphics, so they're a little bit in disguise. But it's a drastically different feeling ski. So what most people know and like about Rossignol skis is there are a couple qualities. Really is they're really, really stable. They've always been super, super stable. They have really good energy return, and they're just fun to ski. So we wanted to maintain all the same aspects of the skis that we've always had, but we wanted to kind of change where the construction lives in the ski itself. So what we really set out to do was to change the swing weight and the feel of the ski. So the pressure distribution was part of this as well. So we pulled a lot of material out of the tip and the tail. So we used to have something called an active edge that ran tip to tail, which was a thin ABS strip, a red thin ABS strip that ran all the way around actually the whole circumference of the ski. We pulled that out, and what that does is it takes a lot of material out of the extremities of the ski, and so we can focus on bringing a lot of the weight of the ski underneath the foot. And so by taking a lot of that out, that changes kind of that lateral stiffness. But how we counteracted that was put in a new edge-to-edge high modulus carbon sheet in the ski. That's more of a top sheet and kind of wraps around, as well as an additional carbon layer internally in the ski as well. And so with that, we still kind of maintain that lateral stiffness and that stability that everyone likes, as well as having that energy return, but in a much kind of lighter weight feeling package. I mean, the swing weight, when you think about when you're skating, how many times you bring the ski back under your body, it's drastically different with the new ski. Also, by pulling a lot of that material out of the tip and the tail, as well as having a new tip and tail insert that's a much lighter weight material. We also allow the ski, the tip and the tail to kind of float through a lot of like softer snow conditions as well. And by doing that, we lessen a lot of the pressure points that may have happened in the past with some of that excess material. So, in softer material, in softer snow, in warmer snow, whatever it may be, mashed potatoes, any kind of stuff, new snow over hard, anything like that, it's really going to float a lot more because that pressure distribution is come a lot more back under the foot itself.
There's a particular condition that I am so excited to ski with these skis in, and that is pretty much everywhere in the United States, but you find it, well, everywhere. When you have powdered snow that's been groomed and then the powder sets up.
Yep.
So it's the kind of powder, when you walk on it, it makes a noise because there's air trapped in there.
Yep.
When you ski on that and it's corduroy, the flex and the softness of the pressure distribution being very forgiving in the front of that shovel of the ski, the softer it is, the better they go, the harder it is, the more it compacts that snow and plows a little bit. And
Yep.
What you described about the skis, they're perfect for skiing on actual corduroy, as compared to, I'm sure they'll be good in skied in snow, but in corduroy, in my mind, they'll be extremely advantageous compared to a ski that's not as soft in the front. And also mass start races. I ski and have skied a lot of mass start races where you're skiing on corduroy if you're towards the front.
Yeah.
And in those conditions, I always pick skis with a softer tip because you're not skiing and skied in snow as much. You're skiing on this corduroy that needs to be broken down until you can ski a really hotter ski. And
Yep.
so these are conditions among many others that I know that are going to go very well in, and I'm excited about.
Yeah, I mean, the versatility in the skiability of the ski is kind of something that we are after. In the past, I mean, depending upon the profile of the ski, we had skis for all different conditions. Our skis definitely excelled, I think, because of that lateral stiffness. And sometimes if we have a little bit stiffer tip, they really excelled in that firm condition. But now with the change in the pressure distribution, it really opens up a whole new avenue as far as where the skis are going to excel. And honestly, I mean, I haven't skied in a condition where the new skis have not performed well.
So that's a sensitive point, of course, but it's a point that's worth commenting on, and that is sometimes generations of skis are better all-around designs and are oriented towards one condition a little more than another condition. And there have been some years in the past where some of the Rossignol's were, as if it was hard and fast and you needed a ski that was going to offer a good edge to push off with a very strong power return and fast, like conditions you might find in the World Cup regularly.
Yep.
They were awesome. But sometimes that came in a price of some, let's say a really good powder ski. And I think, and I've been really happy with the skis I've had, but I think this model that you're describing are going to be a great all-around model.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really good in everything as compared to the best in one condition and perhaps, in there in other ones. I think this is going to be the model that I've probably been most excited about for many years. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, I was lucky enough to start skiing on this ski 2 years ago when I was doing some testing over in Europe with the development team, and I was blown away by the difference in how the ski feels, for sure. So it's a fun new change. So, not only the ski construction is different, but we have new sizing as well. So we go from 4 sizes to 5 sizes. So with that, what we were trying to do was really narrow the weight range window of the skis to really fine tune the opportunity to really have kind of as perfect of a pick of a ski for anybody as we possibly could. And with that, we offer flexes as well now. So in the S1, which is our cold ski, we have a kind of a medium and a stiff flex. The S2, which is our universal ski, we have a soft, medium, and a stiff. And then in the S3, which is our warm and wet snow ski, then we also have a medium and a stiff. And this is more about kind of fine tuning those specific weight ranges for people to really find the best option for them out there.
In the past, oftentimes for an S1 type ski, especially for a ski that I was looking for cold, dry conditions.
Yep.
I would fit the ski much softer than I would a ski for different conditions. And sometimes that's a reflection of the ski's design. Like what you're talking about, I wouldn't necessarily need to do that. I just go 120% of my body weight, good to go, because the ski is good in those conditions. The design is better. Yeah.
Yeah. And, ski picks it's a very personal thing for sure. So, you get on firm conditions. There are some people, I know some athletes in the World Cup who they like super, super soft skis on really rock hard conditions. And then there are people who are the absolute opposite end of the spectrum. And so there's a lot of personal preference when it comes to ski pick and varying conditions for sure. But I think a lot of it comes down to just making sure you have the right profile of the ski, what that's going to match the conditions that you're in. So, if you're in really firm conditions, whether you're on a little bit softer ski or a little bit stiffer ski, as long as you have, longer contact points to really offer some good stability. And then as you get into softer and softer snow, to have those contact points get slower or kind of get narrower and narrower. To really kind of minimize, suction as you get into warm and wet snow, then, I think it'll be kind of it's a good way to go, at least.
A couple minutes ago, you said something that I wanted to kind of drill down on a little bit, and that is you mentioned kind of the general properties or the reputation of Rossignol Nordic skis, energy return, stability. You mentioned those two anyway, that kind of jumped out at me. And I've skied on Rossignol pretty much my whole life. There was a brief period where I went and then came back. I demo skis and I test skis, and the Rossignol skis, in my mind, ski quite differently than, let's say, some of the other leading or all of the other leading brands. I'm not going to say the brand, but I used to call it the Squirt. Most other brands, but especially this one other brand, when you're skiing as soon as it starts to get away from you, it squirts away from your body. And some people like that, but I hate it. To me, the Rossignol, it's like it's there so I can push off it and it goes in the direction I want it to go. It's very stable, but the stability is not at all at the price of speed or feeling free.
Yep.
And that's an absolutely critical part of why I love the Rossignol, especially the skate skis, so much, because they're fast and they feel free, but not at the expense of squirting away from you, where you could have and I like squirrely skis because oftentimes they're fast, but I don't like squirrely skis that aren't fast. And I'm not saying any other brand is squirrely by nature. I'm just saying that's a characteristic of Rossignol skis, and I ski on other brands all the time, testing them, that I really appreciate. Like you can make the mistake of thinking that a ski is slower because it isn't squirting away from you, whereas it's actually far faster and it's staying with you, so you can push off it and glide, and it's more predictable. I really like that aspect of Rossignol skis and how they handle.
Yeah, predictable is the word that I was going to choose as well. So I mean, I'm lucky enough as well. I get to ski on, and test like a lot of the other brand skis, and I mean, everybody has great skis right now. It's hard to fault anybody out there, but every company has definitely distinct differences between how the skis feel underfoot. And Rossignol definitely has some qualities that I've always at least enjoyed skiing, predictability, stability, as well as that, that energy return and just liveliness under your foot that I really, really liked. So, which is why I am where I am.
For sure. But let me describe it in a different way. Let's say I'm skating without poles on a long gradual downhill. If I had a pair of my Xium Premiums and a pair of any other brand skis, I guarantee if they were the same gliding speed, I guarantee I'd be faster on my Xiums in terms of my actual performance. Skating without poles on a gradual down, just flying, or taking a technical downhill where I'm unweighting and then skiing off the back of a bump and then unweighting and skating through the corners. I'm better on a Rossignol ski because of the characteristics that we talked about. I know that, and I'm all on board for that reason.
Well, great.
I just wanted to highlight, to me, there's a difference in a lot of the materials are the same between brands, and I know their bases are different, but bottom line, that's not the biggest difference in most cases. For me, it's the design element where there are some conscious differences made by disagreements and designers. We want the squirt. No, we want stability. We want predictability. We want someone to be able to fly down a downhill and skate without poles and not lose the platform that he's pushing off of, for example. There are design differences that mean something. And I really like Rossignol skis for that reason. It's not a brand loyalty thing necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the one thing with our skis too is, over the years, the behavior of our skis hasn't really changed. How they perform has changed, but the behavior has been probably one of the most consistent things that we've had. And a lot of that is really due to our, the development team that we have in place, especially in France, and a lot of the top athletes that we work with. As kind of the proving ground. So, Martin Fourcade, one of the best biathletes ever, Bolshunov, and, we work really closely with those guys as far as fine tuning different possibilities of kind of the same idea. And so, we still want to maintain those exact same characteristics that we've always had, but just, maybe have a little bit different performance along the way.
Right. So the design philosophy has stayed constant.
Yep.
That's been my perception as well. Exactly.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So skate skis, we're talking about fitting skate skis now. Skate skis are generally fitted at around 110 to 120% of body weight, depending on the ability of the skier. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I would say depending upon the skier and kind of their preference for ski, it can even be up to 130%.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Okay, I was going to make a joke, but I also find it better to fit my cold skis softer and my faster conditioned skis. I don't think of it as cold and wet necessarily, but it seems like the faster the snow is, the, let's say, stiffer a ski you can use because it has a better high-end speed generally. And if I use a stiff ski in very cold, slow snow, I'll pay for it in breakaway speed. That's the speed where they start to accelerate.
Yep.
And so the way I look at it is I generally fit my cold skis softer, and then my fast condition skis, usually in S2, stiffer. And I find in the cold snow, a softer ski breaks away easier, meaning it feels faster at slower speeds, such as climbing. And a stiffer ski might feel slower climbing or around the same, depending on the conditions, but would have a much better top end speed, on a fast downhill or cranking down, skating without poles or something. So in cold, slow conditions, I generally choose better breakaway speed in terms of what I'm looking for when I do my ski selection.
Mm-hmm.
And in faster snow, I generally choose improved higher end speed. And, when you do your ski selection, you have to prioritize. And that's what I generally prioritize. In cold snow, breakaway speed, that is cold, slow snow, breakaway speed. And in faster snow, I don't worry about breakaway speed because it's fast conditions. I just look for high end speed for the most part.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, and again, it kind of goes back to personal preferences, I think, in this realm, and what kind of people prefer based on conditions. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, I think one thing with ski selection itself, if people, are lucky enough to be out there who have multiple pairs of skis, it's easy to overthink it. What I say is, like, if I'm ever testing with athletes or anything like that, and like, just what feels good, I mean, myself and, our race manager, Evan Elliott, we'll be out and we'll be testing skis, we'll be testing wax, we'll be doing kind of everything across the board, and we'll have ideas of what feels good. But if it doesn't feel good to the athlete or whoever it is, then they're going to choose whatever they feel comfortable on. So I think, a lot of it comes down to personal preference, but based on condition, I think, as we were talking about before, a lot of it is, can be based on just the profile of the ski itself, depending upon how it's going to meet the condition of the snow. There are a lot of people who love that breakaway speed. Especially for climbing, it makes sense because you want it to release really well. And it makes sense for cold snow, especially when it's draggy. And honestly, you're not going to have crazy high-end top speed in cold conditions anyway. Just because it's kind of aggressive nature of the snow crystals. I mean, it definitely makes sense what you're looking for, but as far as stiff and soft, I think a lot of that is kind of personal preference.
I became aware of this, of the way I like to pick skis based on experience I had that highlighted the danger in just using a speed trap. I was at a World Cup. It was a biathlon World Cup it was at a time when the ski companies were, and I was working, I told you, it was a couple of years where I was with a different brand, which is now out of business, and basically, and it was Germina. I worked for Germina for some years, and I was at this World Cup working for Germina, doing some service. The World Cup was in northern Italy, and there was a German athlete, many German athletes were on the brand, on the product, and we had just come out with carbon fiber skis. And there was a totally new construction. The carbon fiber was less flexible.
Yep.
We had a higher camber, and the skis that this one athlete chose, and he was a contender in every race. He's got multiple Olympic medals. The skis that he chose were chosen basically off the speed trap. They obliterated every other brand out there, or every other ski with different constructions in the speed trap. And compared to all the other athletes, his skis also crushed everybody. And he chose them. And I was, kind of like, you got to be careful when you're going with completely new construction, with completely new flex and everything, because you don't know what you're getting into. And this place in northern Italy where we were ski racing is known for dry snow, which you can get into trouble with picking the fastest skis in a speed trap. And when he did the race, and his ski time was something like 2.5 minutes slower than what he had expected it to be. And again, this is a multiple Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah.
And he came to me afterwards and said, what the heck happened? I'm never going to ski on these things again. And then I explained to him the trade-off, and it became aware to me. I became much more sensitive to it, the trade-off between high-end speed and breakaway speed, especially when it comes to cold, dry snow. You have to be careful.
Yep. Yes.
And ever since then, I've been real careful about it, because if it gets a multiple Olympic gold medalist and he chooses the wrong skis, then it could happen to all of us.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there's there's a little magic to ski picking as well. And there's a lot of luck. So, I mean, you know, as well as anybody, you'll go out one day and what seems like a similar condition to another day with the same pair of skis that were fast the day, you know, a couple days ago. And it could be minor percentage change in, you know, moisture level or whatever. And your skis are dogs. And you're like, God, what is going on? And it's just one of those things that's, sometimes it happens. And it's, you know, the more testing you can do and the more time really for anybody out there, the more time you can spend on your skis and recognizing where they're good and where they excel versus where they really don't work that well, the better off you're always going to be, for sure. And that goes for, you know, someone who's just starting skiing, someone who's been skiing for 50 years to, you know, any elite athlete out there. You know, something that we always tell our athletes that we work with is spend time in your skis. Go ski them, like, you know, line them up, go do laps on a course, and you'll see, you know, and do it every day. And, you know, varying conditions. And so you'll learn the characteristics of each pair of skis, where they're good, where they're bad. This ski climbs well. This ski has great breakaway speed. You know, this ski, you know, works really well with a lot of moisture in the snow, and so on and so forth. And like, the more time you can spend on whether it's a fleet or skis or one or two pair, it doesn't matter. The more time and the more comfortable you are recognizing their benefits, and kind of their, you know, where they excel and where they don't excel, really, the better off you're going to be, always.
Absolutely. And then once you recognize a predisposition, then it makes sense. You know, if you have a pair of skis that you thought were good cold skis and they turn out to be really good wet snow skis, then you might as well throw a wet snow grind on there and
yeah,
kind of,
yeah,
or you have the luxury of multiple pair of skis like that, then
yeah. Or, you know, I mean, you know, grab your Toco structure tool and go out when it's wet, you know, with what you thought was a cold ski that hasn't really been performing well, and throw a different, you know, throw some structure on there and see how it performs. I mean, I have to say, I have a pair of great skis. They're probably 5-6 years old. And I have a feeling they're going to be relegated to rock skis now with the new construction, but they're meant to be a cold ski. And as far as kind of like that, you know, 20 degrees Fahrenheit and up, they are lights out fast. It's unreal. And, you know, you're supposed to be good for, you know, maybe 15 degrees Fahrenheit and under, but it's actually the opposite end of the spectrum. And so, and it's one of those things where, you know, I was lucky enough to be able to just like constantly test and see where they're good and where they're not good, and recognize like, okay, you're supposed to be cold skis, but they're not great cold skis, but they're really good in this other condition. So yeah.
And I guess what we're seeing now is probably giving a lot of people stress, but I think hopefully a lot of other people feel the way I feel, and that is it's fun. Like I'm blessed enough to have multiple skis, and I love taking a bunch of them out and playing around with them and figuring them out, you know, what they're especially good in and what they're perhaps not so good in, because I love having fast skis. And when I can match up my skis to the conditions, and then you got wax and structure on top of that. But the first most basic element is matching the skis up to the conditions. It's really exciting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as you said too, you know, not everybody is lucky enough to have, you know, 10, 15, 20 pairs of skis for some people. And some people have one pair, and that's totally fine. I mean, honestly, just get out and ski and enjoy, you know. I mean, anytime you're out skiing is really, you're better off. You're not sitting in front of a computer. You're not sitting at your desk. You're out, you're enjoying. That's all that really matters.
Well, I got a lot of pair of skis too. And there were a few years over the last 10 years where I had one pair of skis that were head and shoulders ahead of all my other skis in almost every condition.
Yeah.
And so from that point forward, as far as racing went, effectively I had one pair of skate skis.
Yeah.
Because they were awesome. They were so incredible. That's all I was skiing on, because they were unbelievable. So sometimes even if you have a lot of pair of skis, you only have one pair that you're actually racing on, because they're
yeah. I mean, honestly, you look at some of the World Cup athletes I know and have known over the years. They'll have 30 to 50 pairs of skis, but really when it comes down to it, they have 3 pairs of skis that they race on.
Right.
So they'll have a cold pair, you know, kind of a uni pair, and then they'll have a warm pair. And other than that, doesn't matter. I mean, so when I was back in my stone grinding days, our technician for the stone grinder that we had, he was a Swedish guy, and his stone grinds had won, oh my God, I think he said when he retired, he had won 150 different individual world championship and Olympic medals on his grinds. And he said there was a Russian woman that he used to grind skis for a really, really long time. She, just that one pair of skis, she raced on for 9 years and won, I think she won 12 different individual medals, either at the Olympics or the World Championships, because they were that fast. And so, and he just reground them and reground them and reground them until basically there was nothing left to them. So yeah, people will always have one or two pair that they're be their go-tos. But hey, if you have one or two pair and that's it, then you're ahead of everybody else because you don't have to weed through all the other options.
And let's talk about S3s.
Okay.
So obviously S3s are for wet conditions in general.
Yep.
We also know that they perform well in other conditions too, sometimes really well, but they're made for wet snow. One would think that S3s would be fitted the most stiff, being that they're for wet snow. This isn't the case though, necessarily. I was hoping you could tell us how you fit S3s.
So depending upon where someone is skiing, it can play into it. You know, if they're, I mean, nowadays, especially with the amount of man-made snow options out there, which generally have really, really aggressive abrasive snow, the S3 is a great ski for that because it has a harder base. So it stands up well. You know, the base itself, it's a white base. So it's a graphite, but we pull out the black color. It's a harder material. It's also more hydrophobic and it repels dirt really well. So getting into those wetter, kind of nastier conditions, it does really, really well. The big thing with S3s too is something that I found with testing is I've actually gone a little bit softer than maybe I would have in years past, just to minimize any kind of pressure points and any kind of risk of the ski plowing some of that softer snow, especially once you get into like really, you know, warm, deep, soft snow. But really what you want is it's all about minimizing those pressure points. So you want really good, as much separation in the tip and tail. So you want tip and tail splay as you possibly can get so the ski can really float over and minimize that suction between the ski base and the amount of moisture in the snow.
So that's kind of what I was alluding to. The S3 it's not necessarily a continuance of the difference between S1 and S2s. It seems to me that the pocket is a little shorter to allow room for the tip splay and tail splay.
Yep.
And for that reason, if you're skiing on a super stiff pair, it kind of defeats the purpose of the intended tip and tail splay. I've got a pair of S3s that was fitted for me from someone else, not yourself. And they were, I had a hard time skiing on them, especially in certain conditions, harder conditions.
Yep.
I felt like they were on rails and it wasn't just me. A few other people tried them and we were like, wow. And I came to you for the season afterwards and said, I've got a real problem. You need to convince me of the S3s. I know people in the World Cup are winning races on them all the time, but I depend on my own experiences as well. So I can say other people do well on this, but I don't know how to make them fast yet, kind of a thing, you know? And so you set me up with a pair of S3s. You fitted them for me. You picked them out, and they've been absolutely fantastic. So the first ones that were fitted for me were really stiff. The second ones that you fit for me were much softer, and they were much better in the same super wet conditions. So that's just something that needs to be pointed out, I think, because the idea is, well, of course, if it's stiff, if it's really wet, especially wet and hard even, then I can get away with a higher camber, you know, really stiff S3 kind of a thing. But you got to be careful with that because that's not necessarily how the construction is designed.
Yeah, I mean, so the difference between really the construction between the S1, S2, and S3. So the S1 has, you know, kind of that longer pocket, longer contact, tip and tail. to offer more stability in those really firm conditions. The S2, that contact point kind of comes in a little bit. The bridge under the ski comes in a little bit as well. And then the S3, the same kind of thing. And it's really, as you said, to that point, it's, it's really about minimizing the suction between the ski and the moisture in the snow, but going a little, what I found at least, going a little bit softer, not like crazy, if you weigh 170 pounds, I'm not saying pick a ski for 140 pounds, maybe just air, a couple kilograms or pounds down or something like that versus what you would have chosen or have a shop choose for you. And I've just found that it just lessens a lot of the pressure points, and it just lends to a faster ski overall.
Yeah, and that's the point I want to make regarding the S3, because again, if you're skiing in wet snow, the idea is less contact, stiffer ski. Great. But that's not necessarily the way it works, because the S3 is a different design, and it's got tipped and tail splay worked into the design. So
yes,
if you go soft, you're not necessarily increasing contact unless you go way too soft.
Exactly.
So
the camber is built to minimize that contact itself.
Exactly.
Whether stiff or soft, it doesn't matter.
So you don't have to do it by making it stiffer, because it's built that way.
Exactly.
And then, of course, in wet snow, oftentimes you get softer snow. And if you go the super stiff route, you're going to be plowing. Yep. So that's what I wanted to hear from you, was some clarification on that. It seems to me that it would be a mistake to say, hey, wet conditions, I'm just going to go with 130% of body weight or something. My experience, based on my limited sample size, and your confirmation based on your huge sample size and experience, is don't go too stiff, but err on the soft side with the S3s.
Yeah.
And for those reasons.
Yes.
That's really important, because I think if you screw that up and you go super stiff, you're going to have some skis that perform really badly in certain conditions, because that's not how they're constructed to be fit.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I had a pair of skis a long time ago that were really, really, really stiff, and too stiff for me regardless anyway. And I skied them on a warm day, and it was just, they were plowing so much that, and I had this before I was with Rossignol. I had a pair of Rossignol, and I had another brand ski. They were both kind of warm skis. And actually the Rossignol ski that I had was too stiff, and it was so slow. And the other one was much softer, and it was actually a much better fit. So it was more about the profile of the ski, but also about kind of just lessening those pressure points in the ski itself.
So S2s are a fantastic all-around ski.
Yes.
And you fit the S2s, kind of conventionally, somewhere between 110, 120% body weight. I'm going to come out with some comments, because you just said you were talking about super stiff skis. There are a couple conditions that I've found a super stiff, meaning at least 120% body weight, pair of S2s seem to work extremely well in.
Yep.
And I call them, they're special conditions. So one would be, if you're skiing in, this is skating, S2s. If you're skiing in mashed potato type snow, so you have super deep snow and there's no platform underneath. So it's, it's like shin deep kind of snow, which you find in huge snowstorms, and you can also find in wet. But I'm talking about, let's say it snows a foot, they tried grooming it but didn't set up, and a whole bunch of skiers went through it, and it's just deep and soft. I find if this course is flat, so there's not a lot of climbing, flotation becomes extremely important. If the skis can float over that snow. And I found a very stiff S2, it's got quite a long so-called wheelbase, and it floats pretty well on the flat. And if the temptation we go to with an S1 in those conditions, but an S1 wouldn't offer the longer wheelbase, the stiffer tip, somewhat stiffer tip. In other words, it wouldn't offer the flotation that an S2, a stiff S2 especially, would offer. And so for flatter conditions, let's say the Boulder Mountain Tour in really deep soft snow like we had, I think 2 years ago.
Yep.
I recommended this exact thing to some skiers, and they had the races of their lives. And I tested it, and it was the way to go. If that same course had been a course like Soldier Hall, I would not have recommended that because you ski in deep snow with those really stiff, high cambers. They plow on the climbs in that super deep snow. And then I would go with an S1, a soft S1. But in the super deep snow, the amount of climbing, I think, determines if I'm using an S1 or a very stiff S2.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the idea of flotation? Seems to work really well on the flat, but not so well on the climbs.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, flotation like that too, especially on a flatter course, you're not going to be putting, as you are on a climb, you're not going to be putting quite as much power into the ski as well. So having that flotation is going to offer a much more stable platform for sure. But I think, some of that too could be a little bit more personal preference as well, as we had talked about, because, a softer ski, if you go a softer ski is not going to kind of plow as much, but you still could get some flotation depending upon the profile of the ski itself. If you do have a longer contact point, even with a softer ski, you're going to get good flotation. So it kind of depends on, a little bit of your technique and how you ski and so on and so forth. I mean, you're a strong guy, so, you can get away with a stiffer ski for sure, because you do put a lot of power into the ski. That may not be the case for everybody out there, but I totally agree in that situation. The flotation, one, it's going to offer really good versatility and kind of that outright speed, especially in the flats. But it's going to offer, again, a really good stable platform under your foot. So it's going to be easier to glide, easier to balance. And you're not going to kind of get stuck down into the snow, especially if you are able to kind of reach those higher speeds.
I liken it. I mean, you don't necessarily need to make a comparison, but if you talk about someone with really good swimming techniques, such that their legs stay high in the water, yep, and they displace less water when they're traveling through the water.
Yep.
And I think it's the same thing, that flotation concept on the flats. I've found I can go much faster with less work, as long as I don't use my legs too much, because I'm displacing less snow while I'm traveling over the snow on the flats with stiff skis like that. Whereas if you get to the hill, it becomes a liability and shoot up hills, that steep, stiff camber, because there's more pressure on the front of the ski climbing in that soft snow. It'll dig in because the camber's so high. But that's just something I found that's how I would do my ski selection between a really stiff pair of S2s and a soft pair of S1s in that deep mashed potato snow is how much climbing is there in the course. And if it's a mass start, I might even think about, okay, if I'm in there, how do I get to the finish line first? I might look at the last couple Ks and say, okay, do I want to have the best skis in the finish, and what is the terrain before the finish?
Yeah, well, and you think about races like the Berkey too, the course can be 100% difference if you're in the first wave versus the seventh wave, because it gets chewed up. And so there's skis like that or races like that where, because of the amount of people on the course and how drastically the course changes over the course of a few hours, ski selection will be very, very different depending upon kind of where you are in the race as well.
Absolutely. So, I mentioned the same thing about the point-to-point races with corduroy. Traditionally, I'm in front and I'm skiing on corduroy. And we do our wax tips, and people talk to us about ski selection at expos before these races. I'm always like, okay, where are you going to be? Because if you're in the top 25, let's say, you need to have a pair of skis that's going to address the corduroy.
Yeah.
But if you're in 100th to 1,000th or whatever place, it's a whole different race back there, and there's more moisture in the snow because so many skis have skied over it. It creates a water film, and the actual softness or hardness, and depth of the snow is different. So that's something I'm very sensitive to. Let me talk about another condition, and this is something that I've had great success in. It's the same flex I was just mentioning, but I don't worry about the climbs. And that is when there's a hard base of snow, and then it snows, let's say 3 inches on top, which is a very common condition. You find it at marathons, they don't regroom oftentimes if it snowed just 3 inches, 2-3 inches.
Yep.
And I've found if I use the skis that I would traditionally use for that temperature range, I'm going to have more contact with the snow, the ski base on the snow, than I would, because of that loose snow on top of that hard base. It'll fill the camber at all times when I'm gliding, even on an unweighted ski. Like if I'm in a tuck, for example, you still have much more contact with the snow. And for that reason, more contact, more suction, more drag. And what I've found in those conditions, warm or dry, is I go with a really stiff pair of S2s. When you have a hard platform, so I'm not talking mashed potato snow, it's a hard platform with 2 to 3 inches of fresh snow on top, and you're skiing on that, it's not skied in. Having a much higher camber yields far less drag in my experience and a much faster ski. And I know that's a very specific condition, but they're actually pretty common.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's, a stiffer ski in that, and what a lot of people will tend to do, even in harder conditions, will ski. They can afford to ski with a little firmer ski because it's going to offer a little bit more stability and energy return. But having something with a little higher camber in the conditions that you're talking about will minimize just kind of how much you're plowing, because it'll kind of free up the ski a little bit to move over that fresher snow. Because generally with snow like that, you're going to basically, go right through, and you're either going to be on the hard surface underneath or just on a little bit of layer underneath as well. So there's a little bit more snow to kind of like push out of the way. So, having something with a little bit higher camber is just going to move a little freer through that. And will be, a little bit different profile than you would choose if it was just rock hard and it wasn't a soft snow or wasn't like new soft snow on top, for sure.
Yeah, I need to make a clarification. So I'm not talking about super wet new snow.
Yep.
Where that's a different animal, because when you're skiing through that, oftentimes you hear that crunch, 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 and that's the snow compacting under the tip.
Yeah.
I'm talking about drier snow that's 2-3 inches deep over a hard, where you don't have to worry about moisture management so much, but there's still a drag associated with having a lower camber in that snow. When you go to a high camber ski, like a real stiff S2, and you'll find it's got far less drag at slower speeds, but especially at high speeds, like on a higher speed downhill or a flat where you can, you're skating really hard. There's a far less drag at high speeds, which is why I think it's important to highlight that, because whenever I can find a condition where I can match up a pair of skis to the condition and find a significant advantage, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, any advantage where you can get, especially if you happen to be in a race, I mean, and slow skis are never fun.
I mean, this is what I do. I know this is what you do too, but I race a lot too, and it's important to me, very important to me, to have really fast skis. So this is what I do, Okay, let's talk about classic skis.
Okay.
For years, I'd say pre-skin, the few years before skins really hit, classic skis were, at least from my perspective, a drastically shrinking category. That's true, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So classic ski sales were dying,
Waxable classics, yes. Yeah,
exactly.
I agree. Yeah.
And since the introduction of skins, the category is exploding, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay. Yeah. So skin skis are fantastic, and it's an exploding category. So let's talk about it. They're fantastic for easy skiing and training. That said, they're also being used more and more for racing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a lot of citizens racers and masters racers are using them all the time, but even in elite ski racing, they're being used more and more. The issue when it comes to racing is the drag, not the kick. They kick like a mule, but the drag is the issue. Do you have any tips for better skin performance outside of applying a product such as Toco Skin Proof, which would minimize freezing of the skins or icing, and it also speeds them up?
Yeah, I mean, in general, the skin ski category has exploded over the last 4 to 5 years, and even starting before that, mostly because I think people were just getting frustrated with kick wax. There's unfortunately for companies like Toco who sell kick wax, but it wasn't necessarily anything to do with the wax itself. It was having to drastically change what wax you're using every day, and even over the course of the same ski, you would have to change your wax 3 or 4 times with the latest weather patterns, everything, all the global warming stuff that's happening. The unpredictability of wax on classic skis was just getting, and still is getting, harder and harder to predict. So, people, I think, were getting a little discouraged, and skin skis enabled a lot of people to come back to classic skiing that have maybe been scared off for a little while. I mean, of course, having said that, there's nothing like going out and skiing on a perfect hard wax, like classic day. It's still hard to beat, and it's still super, super fun. And waxing in those conditions are pretty easy and straightforward.
So for the most part, I don't think skin skis have hurt kick wax sales at all, really. At least not from our side. The Toka wax line, for kick wax, we have 4 colors, temperature sensitive colors in a binder. And for Clister, we have 3 in a binder. And we don't make a wax for every single condition. And where we are a little weaker sometimes is because we don't have, the closer you get to 0 degrees Celsius, more moisture in the snow,
Yep.
the smaller the ranges in the wax. So you can have like 1 degree between waxes when you get
Oh yeah, for
that
sure.
range. And that's where we haven't decided to split hairs. Our philosophy is, let's say you've got 15 different kick waxes in one huge line. You're going to use 4 or 5 of them 90% of the time. That's the Toko kick wax. That's our philosophy right there. And when it comes to the temperature range where, let's say the sun goes behind a cloud, next thing you know, your wax doesn't work anymore, because it's a little icy. Or the sun comes out from behind a cloud and now it's too soft because there's too much moisture and you need to switch it. That's the kind of stuff where we're like, you know what, just use your skins and we're happy and you're happy, everyone's happy, So
yeah, well, and to your point, I mean, there are still, a good number of people who are buying waxable classic skis out there, but there are just a lot more people who are buying skin skis in addition to those. So, the category, classic skiing in general, the whole category has kind of, had a rejuvenation really because of skin skis. And it doesn't necessarily take away from waxable classic ski sales. It just increases the amount of skis overall that are being sold. But as far as the fit of a skin ski, something that we try to do in our construction of our skis is, for us, as you said, I mean, it's pretty rare you're going to slip on a skin ski, unless it's like rock hard conditions or something where, I mean, you can't even get your pole into the snow or something like that. And the only thing that's going to work is, a cold clister cover or something like that. But for us, it's really about trying to maximize the glide. So something that we started to do actually last year was we changed all of our camber heights, and we actually raised the camber heights of all of our classic skis to really be able to maximize the glide and make sure that skin is off the snow and you're able to glide in, not in a wide variety of conditions, not only soft and wet, but also in colder conditions as well. So, a properly fitting skin ski it's really, really important. And because of that, a lot of shops, a lot of people who fit skis out there will generally fit a ski much stiffer than they would, a traditional waxable classic ski. So they'll go more into the range of how they'll fit a clister ski. So whether that's, 60 to, depending upon this, the technique and the skill level of the skier, up to, 70+% of their weight for a skin ski.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So you addressed the question, and that was, do you fit skin skis any different from regular classic skis? You just addressed that. As a company, you've addressed that by making the camber a little higher.
Yeah.
But in terms of,
I mean, even with a higher camber, I mean, the skis are still going to be really easy to kick just by nature of the skin itself, just because of how much it sits down from the ski. But really, it's all with a skin ski. It's really about maximizing glide.
And in the percent, in terms of fitting, let's say there's a shop employee listening, or someone that is a coach, for example, and they have they flex skis. In terms of percent of weight, body weight for classic skis, do you fit a skin ski, let's say 5% different than a regular classic ski?
At minimum 5%. Yeah. I mean, I would say, you know, depending upon someone's technique and how long they've been skiing and their experience, you know, a waxable classic ski is probably going to be 50 to 60% of someone's weight, somewhere in there. But a skin ski, you know, a clister ski is usually 60 to 65%, somewhere in there. I mean, a skin ski is going to be 60 to, I mean, could be 70, 75, depending upon, you know, how good of a skier it is.
Yeah, cool. Okay, this is kind of a basic or boring question, but can you talk about fitting your ideal classic ski for hard waxing and hard pack snow? So we're talking about a C2.
Yep.
Just general parameters in fitting a C2 and what you're looking for in fitting a ski or a good ski.
I mean, you know, any C2 that's going to be, you know, that's going to be used across a wide range of conditions. You want something that's going to be kind of user friendly for everything. So, you know, something that's going to be soft enough that you can really kind of maximize kick in cold conditions. But then something that also is going to have kind of a good balance of, you know, a decent enough camber height that you're going to have some clearance if you need to put on a clister, or, you know, if it is kind of a hard pack snow day, or even a, you know, a softer day where you might need like a clister cover or something like that. So whether that's, you know, just a higher portion of the bridge where you can really shorten the pocket, and just finding that good balance, you know, that's something that we do with our C1 and C2 and C3 construction, much like we do in the skate skis. Is the C1 really has that longer, lower resting camber height made for hard wax conditions, and that C2 is kind of that happy medium. So a little bit higher resting camber, you know, a little bit not quite as long as a pocket as the C1, but then definitely longer than what we would use for our C3. So in our C3 clister ski, we actually put in an additional layer of carbon in the ski to really be able to hold that strong camber, so to really maximize glide, and so you're not dragging clister on the ground.
And so that C3, not only does it have a very strong resting camber because of that carbon to make
Yep.
sure you have room for the clister, but
Yep.
it also has tip and tail splay to minimize.
Yes, yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, to really, much like on the S3 skate ski, really to kind of maximize, you know, that short contact point, so you're not really getting stuck to the moisture in the snow.
So the point is, a C3 is not just another extension of a C2. It's not like a real stiff C2. There are some things about it that are markedly different, not just the resting camber, but also the tip splay that you're doing on purpose to minimize contact of the base on the snow in wet conditions. In other words, to minimize suction, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Very, very different, a whole different idea, but kind of utilizing a very similar construction.
I'm getting off of what I wanted to talk about directly, but this is an important point to make. With less people using fluorinated or very hydrophobic waxes these days,
Yep.
It seems to me that having a pair of C3s and S3s would be far more important even for the future, because you can't depend on wax to repel the water anymore as much. You have to depend on ski construction and flex, minimizing contact with the snow. So going forward, if I didn't have a pair of S3s and C3s, I would definitely have a pair going forward, because the wax is not gonna, they're not gonna ski the same. You know, a pair of, let's say, C2s or S2s is not gonna ski the same in real wet snow, where before you could use a really hydrophobic wax on it. You need to depend on the construction, the flex pattern of the ski now to repel, to avoid suction, minimize the suction.
Yeah, I mean, options in skis, ski selection for athletes, all of that is going to become more and more important, you know, as we kind of go away from fluoros as well. You know, another big aspect is going to be structure on the base of the ski. So whether that's a hand tool or a stone grind or something like that, then that's going to be really important, especially as we get away from the high fluoro stuff, especially in wet conditions, because, you know, I mean, that's where, you know, high fluoro waxes had the most fluoros in the wax that was specially built for warm, wet conditions, just to really kind of maximize that glide.
So there's another aspect of that, and that is dirt management.
Yep.
Dirt is mostly found in wet snow. That's you know, when you mostly see dirt, and most people know when you increase the structure in wet, clean snow, there's generally no downside. But when you increase the structure in wet, dirty snow, you give the dirt a place to hide in the base, and your base collects more dirt with more structure on it. So again, I want to stress that going forward with, and also the fluorinated waxes, especially the pure fluorocarbons, repel dirt very, very well. So again, going
Yes,
forward,
they
if
did.
you're racing in wet, dirty snow, you can't just, unless it's really clean snow, you can't just add more structure, not worry about it. You really need to manage your moisture as best as you can with your ski flex, and that means S3s and C3s.
Yep, yeah, and the the specific base that we put on those, the C3 and the S3, is really key for that aspect too, because it is a harder, much harder material, and being one more hydrophobic, but it also repels dirt really shockingly well. Actually, I'm always amazed at how clean my bases are after like a really warm ski.
Super. Well, there's a condition I want to talk about, like I did with the skating skis. And that is for classic. And this is my perspective. Correct me or give your own opinion. But I think that one condition where people make a mistake oftentimes is when the snow is that mashed potato-y snow I was talking about earlier. So I'm not talking about a couple inches of snow on a hard base, but rather just boot deep, super loose snow where the snow's coming over the top of your boots and you're going up these hills. And what I call mashed potato snow. When you try to kick, it's really easy to kick through the snow and slip because the camber's being hyperextended a little bit because that snow's so deep. And when the camber hyperextends, you're going to get zero grip. I mean, very little grip because a ski's not meant to be shaped that way, and you'll go through the snow. And my experience, and I learned this the first time from Jim Fredericks, who was a very long time Rossignol race service man. And
I've known Jim since I was 10 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Well, me too. Anyway, most people use very soft skis in soft snow like that. And I get it in somewhat soft snow with a hard base, but when it's that deep mashed potato snow, and you especially in the sections of the course where you want to have good skis, which is oftentimes climbs, if you're not going to do a running herring going up those, and you actually want to be able to get some kick on those, what I found is if you use a stiffer pair of skis, like a stiff C2, like a Clister Flex, or at least a hard pack flex, rather than powder skis, which is the most common choice that I've seen, the skis then can cup the snow in the camber, in that deep snow, and it packs it in the camber, and you can get much more traction and have much more platform to push off than if using a softer ski in those exact conditions. And you can also, of course, wax them longer and a little thicker, which gives you a cushion to get more kick in that snow as compared to a softer ski where you don't have the room to do a cushion or the length necessarily to do a longer pocket. So my recommendation would be to go with a Clister or a stiff hard track ski and plan on kind of cupping the snow, that loose snow, and going thicker with your wax for more cushion as well as a little longer. What do you think of that?
No, I think you nailed it on the head right there.
That's a really common mistake, don't you think? I see that all the time.
Yeah. No, I think with a softer snow or with a softer ski, one of the things is because the ski compresses so much that you blow out the bottom of the track or the bottom of the surface of the snow where you are. If you had that higher camber, it gives you a little bit more ground to really, as you're saying, cup the snow and really, use the snow to your advantage to be able to kind of propel yourself forward instead of blowing out through the bottom of it.
I mean, my experience is for the most part, people think soft snow, soft skis.
Yep.
I need more kick. It's soft snow, I need more kick. I got to go with soft skis. And I think that is a huge mistake to make in those conditions. Okay. Well, I'm glad we agree on that and got confirmation. I want to talk about what we as a wax company are working on developing really fast fluoro-free waxes. But still in wet conditions, nobody has found a solution that has performed nearly as well as the fluorinated waxes and top coats from past years. For people interested in having great skis and races and considering the fluoro ban that exists in pretty much all domestic racing in the United States, how would you make your skis faster in wet snow without being able to depend on wax to make your bases super hydrophobic?
I mean, much to the point that we talked about before, I think the key thing really is going to be ski selection, and having really the proper profile to match the conditions that you're looking for, without, kind of the aid of high fluorinated waxes. I think, ski selection and then also the like hand structure or stone grinds or something like that are going to really, really come into play for sure.
Okay, and I agree, of course.
A lot more so than they have in the past, because you don't have that, so-called crutch of having super fast wax in your skis, especially in wet conditions.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about bindings, because I think the Rossignol bindings can play a role in this as well. So
Yep.
Rossignol bindings can be moved easily forward and backward.
Yep.
And that one click forward or one click back can
Yep.
greatly change the performance and handling of skis. We're talking skate and classic. In classic, as a general rule, if you want more kick, you move the binding one click forward. And if you want more glide, you move the binding one or two clicks back, depending.
Yep. Yep.
Similarly, in skating, for less contact of the ski in the snow, for example, loose snow conditions or wet snow conditions like we just alluded to, you can click the binding back one or two. For skating and for classic, what is your default binding setting for average racers and average conditions?
Just right at balance point, right at 0.
So that's what I do. I know a lot of people that their default is -1. I think the skis are made at 0. That's
yeah, a lot of that too is personal preference. I mean, some people like. I mean, it's kind of like the kind of the ramp angle stuff that people were playing around with quite a bit.
Right.
A handful of years ago. But I think now with the adjustability and the ease of use of the bindings, and really kind of almost being able to do it on the fly, it's really easy to kind of to be able to move around and mess around with kind of where you sit on the ski. Anybody who does that personal preference of where you want it to sit, I mean, generally, I would say probably 90% of the people are just going to have it at 0, and the amount of time they'll use it is pretty minimal until they get into really kind of difficult conditions. But some people like it, if they put it at -1, especially in a skate ski, they just want that ski they like that release feeling of the ski, and just to take a little pressure off the tip. So if they are in, a really, a hilly course, even if it is firm or something like that, it just helps maybe the tip to release a little bit easier for them. And some of it honestly can have to do with a little bit of technique too. It kind of depends where you sit on the ski, how you sit on the ski, and so on and so forth.
Well, about skin skis? My default on skin skis is -1.
Yeah, I mean, well, and a lot of that depends on your comfort with classic technique as well. I mean, anybody who's been skiing for a long time will always err on the glide versus kick section. If you want a super easy day and you're just like, oh my God, I'm exhausted today. I want to really, I don't care how fast I go. I just want bomb or kick. Yeah, throw it to +1, go a little farther forward, you're going to have bomb or kick. Most people who've been skiing for a really, really long time who maximize glide will either have it at 0 or -1. I mean, 0, I think, is a pretty good place for most people to put their binding, especially if the skin ski is fit properly for them. If you get into softer conditions, that's where moving the binding back really kind of frees up that skin by getting you off of the kind of more toward the back of the camber of the ski.
And that's also the case with skating, I think. Would you agree that, let's say you got an S2 ski and the conditions are soft, would you be tempted compared to harder conditions to move the binding back 1?
Yeah, I mean, try it for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's why the bindings are movable. I mean, mess around with it and see what works and what doesn't work. I mean, the same thing that goes along with ski your skis in all conditions to see where they excel. I mean, do the same thing, mess around with the binding placement, move it back, move it forward, mess around and see what feels good in what conditions.
But I think as a general trend, that seems to be more the norm. If a person were to move the binding back, it would be in softer conditions for skating.
Yes. Yep.
And then the other one, which I think is an interesting thing, we've just been talking about how to maybe make your skis work faster, get more out of your skis when you have the absence of fluorinated glide waxes.
Yep.
I could see doing a race like the Yellowstone Rendezvous, for example, in the spring, where commonly you have a cold, dry first lap, and then depending on the year and how fast you are, a rapidly becoming wetter second lap. I could personally see someone, or even making a recommendation for someone who's going to ski, let's say, a 3-hour rendezvous. Ski the first lap with your skis at 0 and your second lap with your skis at -1.
Yep.
And that would do a lot to decrease the contact with the base on the snow when there's developing moisture, and you can start getting suction in the second lap.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And the beauty of the movable binding too is, for those people who really do only have one pair of skis out there too, it offers a lot of versatility in how that one pair is going to perform. So you get into those rock hard conditions, you can move the binding forward a little bit and it gets you right over that top of that camber, and it really gives you really good bite into the ski, really stable platform. And then as you get into warmer, wetter conditions, or even softer, colder snow, you can move it back to really allow that tip to float.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about boots, because I know the premium course boots are new this year for both classic and skate.
Yep.
Can you talk about the changes that were made and what people can expect that will be different when they ski with them?
Yeah. So, much like the skate skis, these boots were really kind of a call from our World Cup athletes. Our previous premium boots were fantastic, and they still are. We still have a number of top athletes in the world still racing on them because they just love the fit, they love the performance. But the big difference with the new skate course and classic course boots is in the lateral stiffness. So the heel counter. So I actually happen to have a boot in front of me. So this is last year's premium skate boot. So the sole and the heel counter were two separate pieces, and they were glued together. This year, this is the new premium course skate boot. This year, it's all full one-piece carbon. So having that one-piece carbon, having an all kind of a molded one-piece thing gives you a much better lateral stiffness than what we've had in the past. So it really just kind of takes the current premium and then just really increases the performance, the lateral stiffness, as well as lightweight aspect to the boot as well. We also have a new cuff design on the new skate boot, on the new course boot. So it's a little bit bigger surface area on the cuff here. We've actually lowered the lateral and medial heel counter just to minimize any kind of pressure points that people may have with the boot, as well as in the heel. We've actually lowered where the carbon hits versus what we've had in the past on the skate boot. This sat much, much higher. And by lowering it, we really kind of minimize any kind of pressure points that people may have on their feet. But with that one-piece construction, heel and sole heel counter, it really ups the game as far as lateral stability. The weights have really dropped in the boot, especially in the classic boot. The classic boot is, I think we lost about almost 200 grams in the classic boot, which is astounding. I mean, that's almost half a pound.
Yeah. So I have these boots, and they're light, they're stiff, they work great. There's not a ton of insulation in them because they're so light and stiff. And you just lost some more from the sound of another 200 grams.
No, actually, when the classic boot, so the insulation with these two are actually the same. The big weight savings really in the classic boot was going from what was the Rossignol Expert Classic sole to the new full carbon classic sole. So the new full carbon classic sole has an engineered flex in it as well. And so just the weight savings really comes from the sole itself and just the new updated build. The insulation is still the same. And one thing with Rossignol boots across the board, from our top level course skate boots all the way down to our entry level, junior boots, touring boots, backcountry boots, every single one of our boots is heat moldable as well.
Cool. At any rate, I don't really get cold feet. I know Rossignol does make overboots,
yep.
But there's some people out there that get cold feet, and they would put the warmth of the boot ahead of the lightness and the torsional stiffness and,
Yep.
and so on. My thinking is that there are some models that are 1 or 2 levels down that have a lot more insulation and are a lot warmer than the premium course boots or something along those lines.
Yeah, even the World Cup boots, which are now, so that was used to be our second tier boot. Now kind of the third step down, definitely has more insulation. It still has, I don't have it here with me, but it still has a very similar carbon cuff to what we had on our previous premium, and still has really good lateral medial carbon heel counter as well. And we have a carbon insert on the sole. So it's a really, really good performing boot. Definitely has a little bit of a warmer package. That's also the first level where you see our women's specific fit. So the FW fit, which is actually a narrower heel through the midfoot of the boot itself. Cool. So as well as a couple other features, a little bit wider top opening of the zipper, things like that to accommodate a woman's lower calf attachment on their leg than where a men's hits. So just some aspects to really make it a little bit more user-friendly for the women.
And I think in general, I have very narrow heels. So I'm a little sensitive to this. I think in general, women have narrower heels as well compared to men.
They do. Yep. So that's why the women's specific fit has that narrower heel through the midfoot, and then the same width at the forefoot that you have in the unisex boots.
And I think that's great that you do that, because if you have a narrow heel, and some companies out there have a reputation for having wider heel, and it kind of clangs around and you lose some control. That's how I feel. I have narrow heels, and I like having a tight fit around my heel because I feel like I have the best responsivity. I have really good control that way. So so Jeff, what resources are available to people if they want to learn more about Rossignol products, and if they have specific questions that they can't find answers to?
We have an abundance of information at rossignol.com. We're actually building out some new pages right now for newer skiers as well. So everything from, how to choose the right ski, how to dress properly. We work really closely with the PSIA demo team as well. And so we're going to have some instructional videos on there for them. Really any and all information that you could possibly find. So everything from, the basics, like how to get into the sport, where to go. We're going to have a list of all of our touring centers across the country, as well as all the individual product information on our product pages in themselves. And through the website as well, you can ask any question. It goes right to our dealer services team. And, and if they happen to be stumped, then they go right to me.
Is there an e-blast or something along those lines that you put out which might address things that are appropriate to the season that people might be interested in subscribing to?
We have some information on our social on our social media pages, for sure. On the Nordic side, a lot of our marketing stuff comes from the race side. So there's a lot of information about that. But this year we'll actually definitely be having a lot more information on our social media page, and rossignol.com on a kind of a rotating basis, on a little bit more of that entry level to mid price point range, whether that's backcountry touring or performance.
Super. Okay. I want to ask you a couple more questions, because I think people might want to, number one, you can impart some wisdom, and then also I think people might want to get to know you a little bit. So first question, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were 18?
Wow.
Lay it on us.
I would say, I loved growing up as an alpine ski racer. But once I stopped alpine ski racing, I moved on to much more endurance related, kind of almost sufferfest type situations that I tended to really enjoy and thrive in. And I wish I'd been younger to been able to explore cross-country ski racing at a much, much earlier age than I did.
Okay. Last question. Do you have a mantra or philosophy that can be summed up in a few words?
Get outside. That's it. So, I mean, these days more than ever, I think all of us can recognize the feeling and the sensation of being cooped up, especially in the current the current pandemic situation. But really, for me, it's like I'm never as happy as I am when I'm outside, and regardless of the weather. I mean, it could be pouring rain, dumping snow. As long as I'm outside and I'm not stuck inside, I'm a happy camper for sure.
I'm a big believer in there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear.
Oh yeah, yeah. And any of us who work in the outdoor industry, we have no excuse because we have more than enough.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely. Okay. Okay. Well, Jeff, thank you. Rossignol, Toko and Rossignol have had a long-standing mutual respect or even cooperation that existed for years. Being in the making skis fast business, I really appreciate having a working relationship with such an exceptional brand, and also with great partners such as yourself. So thank you for giving me and the American Nordic Ski public your time and expertise today, and I hope to see you soon.
Anytime. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that, I mean, we live 20 minutes away from each other, and we have to get on a Zoom call to actually see each other.
It's ironic.
No, I mean, thanks for having me. I've always been a huge fan of Toko, and it's great to get out and say hi to everybody, and wish everybody well, and stay healthy, stay sane in these crazy times. And we'll have skiing before we know it. That's all that matters.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much.